Change to enemy disposition. Numbers increased by 1.5-fold. New officer present, believed Oda Prince Nobunaga. Supply lines folding inwards, suggests defensive movement of main force. Believed Oda armies wintering at Matsumoto. No reports of further Oda men inbound. Oda agents present on South Road. Main force position possibly known to enemy. Northern Battle Group reports illness and are requisitioning food from peasants. Request reinforcements. Deaths in Scouting Brigade high. So now we rejoin the Oda in the middle of their war with the Takeda, spring of 1554, and we can see there are a couple of Takeda armies hidden down here, just over the border between Kai and North Shinano. They also have a large and powerful force kind of near the castle at North Shinano. However, we have tons of forces hidden nearby, and I'm going to move some of them up to challenge this Takeda force, led by Nobunaga and with Takeyama Murayuri in a supporting position. And those Takeda troops withdraw because they would be easily defeated by that coalition of our two great generals. So now I have to decide what to do. I'm perfectly safe at the moment, so I could just wait. However, I'm not really in a position to play a waiting game. I want to take Kai as soon as possible, so I need to start taking steps. Takeyama Murayuri is going to move south and set up an ambushing position on the road just so the Takeda can't move any further north than they already are. This leaves Nobunaga's army to deal with that other rogue Takeda army to the east. Now I was having some doubts about whether I should attack them because they are fairly strong and I'll probably take a few casualties taking them down. However, the longer I wait, the less likely it is that I will capture Kai because the Tokugawa are storming up from the south and will take it. And so, as you can see, I decided to jump in and engage the enemy. According to the balance of power, the Oda army has a slight advantage. Let's hope we can press that advantage home and destroy the enemy without taking too many losses. Let's head into the battle and find out what happens. So here is our battlefield. You can see there's a big conical hill right in the middle, in between where the Oda forces are stationed and where the Takeda forces are stationed. However, the Oda forces are closer, which means I have the opportunity to rush forward and capture that hill if I want. However, you can see the battle is beginning with both sides just standing off, because I wanted to know whether Takeda were going to try and contest that hill or not, because I wasn't completely sure I could establish a steady formation on the hill before they would arrive, since I have to run across the top of the hill to get to the most defensible point. You can see after a while I started to gradually advance my forces to see whether I would be able to get up there. You can see hidden far on my right flank I have a ninja unit out in the forest, and they're going to do some devastating damage later on from their hidden position. But anyway, as I was advancing, the Takeda force decided it actually was going to contest the hill, and their army started charging forward. So in response, I'm charging back to receive the enemy on flat ground, in a position that allows both of my flanks to remain hidden. You can see I'm having to get my ninjas out of their current position, because that position was being slightly compromised by all of the Takeda's cavalry coming through the forest where those ninjas were, so I'm moving them back to the next forest. The enemy infantry have come up over the hill and are now proceeding down towards Oda's main line. The main line consists of spears on the front line, mostly Yari Samurai and Long Yari Ashigaru, and swordsmen at the back line, a fairly common formation, pretty versatile. I'm folding the flanks onto echelons because the enemy cavalry is attempting to charge them, and here in the centre the enemy is beginning their main assault, and I'm rushing troops forward to meet them. This gives me a small charge bonus, means you lose fewer men to the enemy's charge if you counter-charge them. So a huge melee is beginning around the centre. On the edges you can see here the enemy have rushed themselves into a spear wall, these Takeda cavalry, so they're going to have a fairly hard time. And you can see suddenly the Takeda cavalry are absolutely devastated by a series of explosions. This was the ninjas I had hidden off in the forest, threw grenades up over the top of the spear wall and blew half of the Takeda cavalry to smithereens, and then they just rush off from the engagement, not willing to keep fighting under those conditions. Very good work from the Oda Kisho ninja. So now I've got my swordsmen have pushed through to the front lines and are engaging with the enemy swordsmen. The enemy main line consisted mainly of Katana Samurai, however all of their regiments were not at full strength, which means my Katana Samurai have a slight advantage in sheer numbers going up against them. However, I don't have any sort of man-for-man advantage, so I'm still taking heavy casualties on these centre lines, where my men are trying to grind down the enemy forces. Things are going quite well on the left flank, where the enemy's cavalry have been mostly defeated and their infantry being overwhelmed. However, back at the center rear, one of the enemy cavalry units has broken through and is now engaging with Nobunaga's force. Nobunaga locks them in position and some spear reserves come back to finish them off. So it all went okay in the end. However, on the left flank, some Takeda cavalry breaks through the spear wall I have in the forest and starts rushing towards my archers. I'm trying to get my archers out of the way in time. Nobunaga is rushing back through those archers to engage with the enemy cavalry. A very disadvantageous engagement for Nobunaga. He's in real danger here, but I have to just lock those enemy cavalry in position while my spears move up. You can see the spears have now arrived and those enemy cavalry are going to be defeated. And speaking of defeated, the enemy centre begins to rout, and then it quickly begins a chain rout and the whole enemy centre falls apart. So suddenly the enemy force is very rapidly defeated, even though quite a large amount of it was still alive at this point, and I had taken huge losses in the engagement. So with the main body of Takeda infantry now in tatters, all that's left is a small unit of cavalrymen, which is coming along our right flank. Not really sure what they're intending to do, but they're getting caught up in these spear units as they attempt to do it, and then it gradually gets surrounded. Once they realise what's going on, they just rout, without any of their army left. There's no point in them fighting on, and they clearly see this, but a whole bunch of them are caught up as they rout too slowly. But now, the battle is over. It's a decisive victory for the Oda forces. Nobunaga's men have destroyed this Takeda army, so now North Shinano, or at least the eastern approach to it, is safe from Takeda attack. So it was a risky move for Nobunaga to take on this battle, however it has paid off. Let's see if we can get any dividends from it back on the strategy map.
You ought to be careful, that husband of mine. I'm beginning to think he cares more about his army than me. He gives them more than their share of the loot after each battle, and I'll be lucky to see a single gold token or a dagger. The loyalty of the Toyotomi house should not be this cheap, don't you agree? Next time you see him, say something about it. Actually, no, don't. I may need this criticism later. The Oda clan grows large. Who knows when it might splinter?
So here's the battle results screen. Fairly heavy casualties, especially among those katana samurai who were fighting in the center. Nobunaga's unit as well, taking a lot of casualties since they had to engage very dangerously with some of the enemy cavalry there. One unit of enemy cavalry actually survives, which is annoying because now they can potentially maraud around over there and damage our farmlands. However, I didn't really have the time to think about them. It wasn't worth moving an army to deal with them. So for now we're going to focus on the situation to the south, where we know there are larger Takeda armies waiting to attack us. First off, I'm moving Kiyonori's force down from the castle at North Shinano to support Takayama's position, where he's standing off against the Takeda forces. Now, as I've said, there should be more Takeda forces hidden somewhere in the forests here, but I just don't know where they are. And so at this point I was willing to imagine that they've actually left, because I thought they would have attacked us if the forces were present. However, when I move forward, those forces appear. There was indeed a full stack of Takeda forces hidden right there, and now they're coming out to attack us. However, because I moved Kiyonori down to support, the numbers on either side actually end up being fairly balanced. However, the enemy army is very powerful. You can see they have loads of katana samurai, they have firebomb throwers, grenadiers in their ranks. This battle could be interesting. The battlefield was wide and open but for a single hill, and that is why I've positioned Takayama's main force waiting for the enemy to approach. Kiyonori, somewhere in the background, is leading his forces up to join the formation. You can see I'm also moving the whole formation forwards on the hill. Currently standing off against them is a single unit of Takeda cavalry. It's standing there waiting for the rest of the Takeda army to arrive. The whole Takeda army is moving onto the battlefield. Right down here at the bottom you can see it's a whole mix of cavalry and infantry coming in without any particular structure or order. It would have been ideal to be over there and actually attack them when they're out of formation like that. However, I'm too far away, so I'm going to rely on them coming to me. There was Kiyonori's force coming in. His force is mostly spearmen, long yari ashigaru, consisting of the majority of his army. So our right flank is going to be very heavily reinforced against cavalry, and this Takeda army has lots of cavalry in it, so it's potentially useful. Takayama's formation is a 4-line formation consisting of spears, swords, skirmishing, and then spears again at the back. A very steadfast formation to fight against cavalry, especially since we have the hill advantage as well. I had sent cavalry out to try and draw the Takeda army towards me, and they seemed willing to engage. So some of their troops have moved up very close to our formation. This bunch of cavalry, for some reason, seemed content to just trot up towards the main line. They take a few arrows on the way as punishment for their slowness. Out on the left flank, some enemy cavalrymen are trying to get around our rear. However, they are caught when some Naginata Ashigaru rush out from the formation and start engaging with them. So those enemy horsemen are going to have trouble. Back over on the other flank, the enemy have tons of horsemen. There's 4 or 5 units of Takeda cavalry marauding around back here. However, I have a massive reserve of Yari Ashigaru hidden in this small forest you see here on the bottom right, and they're rushing out to do battle with these enemy horsemen. All the while you can see Kiyonori's force coming up in the background, and he has something like between 5 and 7 spear units who can come up and engage with these cavalry with ease. So all I really need to do on this flank is hold the Takeda cavalry in position until I can move up and rout them completely. But of course action is still happening on the center. The enemy cavalry came up, started engaging the center, and drew off some of my Yari samurai as a result. So I'm now trying to reform the center line a little bit. You can see a similar deal happened here on the center right of the formation, but that's just about concluding. Back out on the right flank, the enemy cavalry is really in trouble. These guys are getting completely surrounded. There are just huge blocks of long Yari Ashigaru coming all the way around them, not letting them get back to the Takeda main force. So now that they're trapped in position, they're kind of forced to engage a fight which they'll almost definitely lose in. So an ideal situation for the Oda army, and absolute disaster for these Takeda horsemen. You can see they're being absolutely surrounded, and now they're going to be crushed against these Oda spear walls. But of course I can't focus too heavily on this because the enemy are beginning their assault right over at the center. The main body of their infantry is coming in a completely useless formation, as they often do when coming in as reinforcements. They're sort of spreading out. Some of them are going to attack our left flank, which is currently a little bit exposed because the cavalry have been running rings around some of the units over there. It was more open than it should have been. In the center, they're coming up. Their units are taking arrows as they try and get up the hill. I was still withholding on the charge until right now. You can see the game freezes because I suddenly gave an order to a whole line of troops simultaneously. The game gets a bit angry when you do that. So my spear infantry on the second line bypass my first line and charge down to engage with the enemy. So my fresh katana armed men are going to slash through these tired reinforcements who have been rushing up to the battle this whole time. A fight which can only really go in my favour, especially when my hill advantage is taken into account. All that the enemy have is a local advantage because of the sheer weight of numbers. They're engaging with more men than I have in some sections of the line. Some explosions go off my left flank. The enemy's firebomb throwers are out there somewhere. I don't know where they are at this stage, and I never saw those explosions go off again for the rest of the battle, so I have no idea what happened to those firebomb throwers. I don't think they did too much damage though, so the enemy didn't utilize them very much. But you can see there are loads of Takeda troops. Look at this huge horde of Takeda troops, and the Oda line is very thin in comparison. This is what I mean when I talk about there being a local disadvantage. That part of the line is in trouble. However, we have a big local advantage over here on the right flank, where Kiyonori's army is just ploughing through these straggling Takeda forces who are attacking without any real cohesion at various points along the line. You see, I've moved forces up. I'm pushing a long Yari Ashigaru wall into this block of enemy Katana Samurai. And even though the long Yari Ashigaru are weak against Katana Samurai, they're so thickly formed up. There are just too many spears for the enemy to get through, and they're being cut down without a chance, really. Look at this center. There's a huge block of Takeda troops. You can see I formed a similar block of Oda troops on the other side by deploying all of my reserve on the fourth line, which is no longer needed to fight enemy cavalry, to the front lines. Those reserves are not very powerful, but they do provide manpower and weight to my line, which is slowly pushing the enemy back down the hill. The right flank completely folds, and as the right flank folds, all of the center decides to just rout simultaneously. So a chain rout ensues, and a large part of the enemy army is destroyed as it flees. It's a glorious victory for the Oda forces. Yet again, the combined forces of Takayama and Kiyonori seeing off another large Takeda army. So this means we've exposed the Takeda ambush that can now, in theory, press our advantage onto Kai. Another victory. Alright, just leave the report there. Now where were we? Ah yes, you estimate the Hatano numbers at 4,000. Nothing to be dismissed lightly. When the war with the Takeda is over, move all troops to the border at Wakasa. Our 6,000 shall be more than enough then. There's nothing for the Oda in the east, only formidable enemies guarding unimportant lands. Let others fight for the forgotten north. From now on, we shall look only west, and at Kyoto. The battle results screen, it's very good news. We took very small amounts of casualties in that battle, and a huge enemy army here has actually been destroyed. So a very good engagement for Takeyama and Kiyonori's armies there. So we're going to be routing a couple of Takeda armies off the field on the strategy map, and this means the road towards Kai is now open, and this was really the reason to attack now rather than any other time, because having the road to Kai open allows me to send my ninja down to gather intelligence on just what is happening in Kai, because this is going to change my strategy for the rest of the turn and the next turn. Kai itself does not appear to be defended, that's good news. However, let's move down into the Tokugawa lands. This is what I was actually trying to look for at this stage. I was trying to see where the Tokugawa main force is positioned. And here it is, it's not very far from Kai. The problem is, it's within marching distance of Kai at the moment, which means if it wanted to, it could capture Kai, and that would be a fair move by them, but it would mean that all the work we have done to defeat those Takeda armies would be for nothing, because we're not going to gain Kai as a result, which I think is really what the Oda deserve at this point. So what I need to do is take Kai as soon as possible. However, I do not have enough movement points to take it right away, and there are a couple of Takeda armies in the way at this stage, but they could be brushed aside with ease. Yes, both of the armies in this area don't have enough movement points, so I'm forced to simply move them into hiding for now, and next turn they'll be able to go and attack Kai, if there is time. So, during the end turn sequence, what I had feared happens. Two Tokugawa main force armies move up and capture Kai, and then defeat the remnants of the Takeda. So the Takeda are gone, and the Tokugawa have replaced them. Our allies have conquered instead of us. So it's both good news and bad news. However, it does mean I now have freedom to move my armies where I want, because I know that that border with North Shinano is not going to be compromised. So I'm looking around and trying to work out where I'm going to take the Oda army from now on. I notice here that the Ikoiki lands are gradually being converted back to Buddhism, so that's good news. So I was beginning to think that having the Ikoiki as an ally might not be such a problem, because I can kind of turn them onto my side over time, using monks and using the presence of monasteries in that area. So as for my strategy going forward, I'm moving Kiyonori and a whole bunch of reinforcements to a position to simply defend North Shinano, because it could be attacked by the Hatakeyama coming down from the north or northeast, or by the Yamanouchi or Uesugi to the east. For the rest of the troops, their destination is westward. They're going to head back towards the capital in the Kinai region, because that is where Oda's future wars are surely going to be fought, and it's where Oda's best interests lie at this stage in the campaign. There's not very much for them over in the east. I'm moving Takeyama's army via a northern route to go through the Ikoiki lands, simply because there are so many Ikoiki armies sitting around in our territory that I was a little bit suspicious about what they were doing, so I thought I'd take him via an alternate route just to check out what's going on up there in case anything happens over the next couple of turns. Here you can see I'm moving my ninja in the Kyoto region to go up and visit some of the castles nearby to see what the sorts of strengths the clans around here have. This is the Hatano clan, the clan that defend the Tango Tamba region and the northern passes into Kyoto. So if I can capture their lands, I'll be able to attack Kyoto from two sides, which will be a definite advantage. Allow me to possibly bypass their standing army and attack the capital directly if I can. To do this, I'm moving Nobunaga and Munyo's forces all the way over to Wakasa, where we have a border with the Hatano lands, and that will be my first attack point. We're moving into the winter now, and I get this offer for Nanban trade. Now we saw this in one of the Takeda episodes, and we saw that I denied it, because I didn't think the Takeda really needed it. In this case, I was thinking I might accept it, because this is going to give me faster access to matchlock units, and that is the vague type of strategy for development that I wanted to do with the Oda, so we're going to accept their offers of trade.
Strangers have come to our shores. They bring weapons of smoke and fire, weapons that kill without honor, without skill. But even so, These foreigners and their guns could give a man power and victory. And victory wipes away dishonor.
So, we have now allowed the Christian Western nations to build trade ports in our nation. We have to authorize the building of them directly. I can't build one here in the capital at Owari because I already have a substantial port that cannot support the extra infrastructure. I can build one here at Wakasa if I can get enough money. The problem with doing this is it spreads Christianity into the province, but the direct advantage is you can import foreign troops into your lands, and those foreign troops are going to be using elite Western weaponry, gunpowder weapons, which should provide a distinctive advantage on the battlefield. So that's the trade-off I am now allowed to take with the Oda for agreeing to this Western trade deal with the Christians. So we'll see whether I can develop on that and whether it will pay off a bit later. Here is the first unit of Matchlock Ashigaru, which you get as a free gift simply for accepting the deal. I'm moving them to join with Nobuyuki's fledgling army, which have been building at Owari for a while, so hopefully we'll see them in battle at some point in the near future. Nobuyuki's army is moving up towards the future battlefront at Wakasa to join Nobunaga and Takayama's forces, and I'm beginning mass recruitment in the Owari region, just in case things go awry in this war. For years we have struggled to reproduce the precise smoothness of the barrel, but now we have the technique of the foreigners. We have the expertise to produce these guns for ourselves. Early tests have been disappointing. They do not fire when wet, they're inaccurate at almost any range, they cannot penetrate armor at the distance an arrow can. But on the other hand, even a fool can kill the greatest of heroes with a reasonable chance when using a firearm. It is this that makes our new weapon the bringer of tumult. Moving into spring, we get a sad message saying that one of my ninjas has been tried and executed by the Yamanouchi. This was Sunutane, the ninja we've seen before in the Eternal Law. He was scouting east of Oda's territory and was unfortunately caught on that bridge by Yamanouchi army and stopped moving during the in-turn sequence because I had his movement automated rather than monitoring it personally, and he was unfortunately executed while I wasn't watching. A very poor show from both me and the Yamanouchi. So, for now I have to focus on the situation with the Hatano. You can see I'm getting my other ninja, who's also at a very high level, into a safe position inside one of the armies here. The armies are now waiting for the war to begin near the border with the Hatano. I'm bringing up the diplomacy panel to get ready for this war by formally declaring it one turn in advance.
Say, but it had better be good.
So I'm choosing declare war. As I've said before, declaring war one turn before you invade allows your war to be seen as more honourable because you've given the enemy a chance to prepare.
I hope you live long enough to recognize your foolishness, but not long after that.
And of course, keeping your clan in an honourable standing is good because it means your people will respect you more and other clans will respect you more when it comes to diplomacy. Now the Hatano kick off this war by blockading one of my ports, with one of their navies there blocking some of my trade, rather inconvenient. Then this happens, the Honma declare war on the Iko Iki, my vassal clan, and I have to decide, am I going to stick with the Iko Iki and join them declaring war on the Honma, or shall I abandon the Iko Iki, allow the Honma to do whatever they want, and end the vassalship? I decided to stick with what I have, and we saw there the Honma immediately invaded the Iko territory. So now back to the war with the Hatano. We're engaging their fleet to attempt to break through this blockade they've put around our ports. It appears their fleet is mainly consisting of trade ships, which is quite strange. So we have a slight force advantage because although both sides have 2 Sengoku Bune, we have 3 medium Bune versus their 4 trade ships, which should be an advantageous fight for us. So here we are on the waters just off the coast. You can see the Hatano fleet is positioned in a line formation, and the Oda ships are gradually going into a crescent moon formation and I'm going to come around. I'm using the Sengoku Bune to attack the edges of the enemy line, whereas the medium Bune are going right up the middle. The enemy has their Sengoku Bune in the center and trade ships on the outside, which means the outside of their formation is the weak part, so I'm hoping my Sengoku Bune will be able to rip through those trade ships on the edge and start evening the numbers out. The Sengokubune are very fast because they have sails. Unlike most Japanese ships, they can use their sails to catch the wind. There's a wind direction indicator at the top of the screen you can just about see. This allows them to sail in very quickly and specialize in boarding with the enemy ships. You can see the boarding beginning now, coming in against this trade ship. Now we have a crew about double the size of the trade ship, even though the trade ship is the larger vessel, which means in the boarding action we will almost definitely win. So you can see the Oda troops diving onto the trade ship to take part in the combat. Most of our troops are going to be katana samurai. Most of the enemy troops in there are going to be bow ashigaru, which means we'll have an advantage in that hand-to-hand combat. You can see similar boarding actions are about to start over here. The formations have all messed up because Hatano broke their line as I approached. Here's a disadvantageous boarding action for us. The Oda medium bune is trying to board this Hatano Sengoku bune, and the problem is that the Sengoku bune has again about double the amount of melee troops as the medium bune has. The medium bune had to engage with its archers for the most part, and I actually broke off that engagement when I realized it was going on, and it was going very badly. So a little bit later, most of the trade ships have been captured or have surrendered at this point. Now it's just the enemy's Sengoku bune. This one's in very bad shape. It's lost most of its troops. It's retreating from boarding actions now because it's got so few crew remaining. And all I really have to do is finish off the remaining crew so that the ship will surrender. You can see here this medium bune is down to just 2 archers from the contingent of about 30 that they usually carry. This one's in better shape and it's getting some nice volleys off right along the broadside of this enemy ship. There are very few men remaining on this enemy ship, but it hasn't surrendered. There's perhaps 10 men alive aboard the boat, but you can see arrows are flying in. There's dead bodies all over the decks already. More arrows coming in and adding to the body pile. And really the enemy ship has no choice but to surrender. And when it finally does, decisive victory is declared. So, we didn't lose any of our ships in this battle. However, the crews of several of our ships were very badly depleted in the boarding actions. So it wasn't the complete victory I'd hoped for, but still, we have lifted the siege on the Oda port. We can see here 2 ships have been abandoned because their crews were so depleted it's not worth keeping the ships. However, we've captured the entire enemy fleet. So we can bring the enemy's boats back to port, recrew them with Oda men, and then we'll essentially have that fleet for our own. So you can see here I'm choosing to repair all the damaged ships. That also recrews them at the same time. So a fairly positive start to this war with the Hatano. How will the war go on? Well, you'll have to wait for the next Oda episode. That's all for this episode. Come back next time to see the Takeda endure a period of uneasy peace on the Eternal Law.